Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the Lacrosse missile with carrier Renwal Revell scale model kit number 85-7824. It's 1/32 scale and it's a skill level 5. There's 139 pieces molded in olive drab styrene and clear acetate film for the windows. And it has water slide decals. It also has very well laid out instructions. This kit replicates the M398 version of the Lacrosse missile. And we have to give Revell credit for dusting off these old Renwal molds and bringing them back for us. But the basic model hasn't changed since its release in the 60s, and you'll find some sinks and ejector pin marks and light flash to repair, but with some patience it builds up into a great special subject matter display. There's also a 5 crew member figure set included, and it's about 10 inches long by 3 1/4 wide by 7.5 inches high when finished. Here is what your completed model will look like when finished, along with 5 crew members on some homemade display stands. Unless otherwise noted, I just used Testors plastic cement for models on this review, and we'll show you how to address some of the repairs and defects to make the parts look more accurate. Now gather the pieces for the front axle assembly and put those together as shown. For the majority of this build, I used some Rust-Oleum camouflage olive drab spray paint to finish the parts. Now gather the parts for the rear axle assembly. After the assembly has dried and the glue is set, paint it with the olive drab spray. Here's one of those cases where you'll find some unfill or sink marks. You can fill them with some putty or leave them as desired. Now gather the transfer case and winch and assemble those to the frame. After the pieces have dried, you can spray this unit with the olive drab spray paint. Now gather the parts to assemble the simple motor and glue the 2 halves of the engine together. Then attach the fan to the front and spray all these parts flat black. Now install the engine assembly into the frame and then add the radiator to the frame assembly too. Assemble the gas tank halves shown here and paint those olive drab, and then paint the center drive line and the exhaust black. Now you can attach the front and rear suspension assemblies to the frame. Now attach the center drive shaft to the transfer case drum and the rear axle assembly. Install the gas tank and the exhaust also. They're attached to the right side of the frame assembly. Now gather and assemble the front wheel assemblies and sand off the center line that appears in the tire tread. Paint these and the center hubcaps drab green, and then hand brush the tires on the outer rims flat black. Now locate the wheels onto the front spindles and then cement the hubs into place, locking the wheels there. Now assemble the rear wheels on the inner side, the 2 halves, and assemble all 4 of those. Next assemble the outer wheels with the 2 halves for each and assemble all 4 of those. Now spray all the rear wheels flat drab green and then hand brush the tires a flat black or a rubber color. Now gather up the 4 axle pins for the rear tire assemblies. Insert the axle pins through the wheel hub of the inner tire assemblies. You won't need any glue here, it's just a simple insertion through the wheel hub. Now attach the inner wheel assemblies to the outer wheel assemblies and then attach those to the frame. There are 4 sets altogether. Now gather the right and left sides of the hood, the firewall, the cab rear, and the fender assembly and spray those with the olive drab paint. Assemble those together into a fender assembly. Here is what the fender assembly will look like when you've got that together. Now gather the seats, the air cleaner, the transfer case shift lever, the handbrake, and the water can and spray those olive drab. Now add these parts to the fender assembly. The water can is attached to the left side step, but it's actually a little bit too tall for the door to open properly. so you may need to cut that down at the base. Now paint the instrument panel and the panel cover flat drab green. You can use a black Sharpie pen here to detail the controls on the instrument panel, then attach the instrument panel cover to the instrument panel. I found a little flash on the grill on the horizontal bars, but it's easily removed with a hobby knife. Now gather the grill, the right and left door, and the left and right headlights and spray those olive drab as well. Now attach the grill and the headlights to the fender assembly. Also, the left and right doors are installed, but don't use glue if you want those to remain optional. The instrument panel is glued to the fender assembly, locking the left and right doors in place. But be careful with the glue so the doors will still stay functional. Now attach the fender assembly to the chassis assembly. Now gather the steering wheel, steering column, and the shift lever and paint those flat black. Now insert the steering column into the opening of the firewall and then attach the steering wheel to the end. A shift lever is then added to the interior floor of the cab as well. Now spray the hood, the windshield frame, and the right and left side mirrors olive drab. To give the rooftop a somewhat weathered look, I brush painted it olive drab. Now attach the hood, the windshield frame, and the mirrors to the body assembly. The cab roof is attached here too, but it's not glued on. On the bottom of the main frame is a copyright stamp molded in and a sticker. You can remove the sticker just by washing it with some detergent. And you don't really need to remove the copyright logo for the Renwal there because it won't be seen when completed. Now spray paint the main frame, the center cross frame, the rear panel, and the spare tire front bracket with the camouflage olive drab. Now you can attach these parts to the main frame. From this view you can see the spare tire front bracket on the bottom of the main frame. The generator front panel, housing, end panel, and generator panel cover are all sprayed with camouflage drab paint. Now detail the gauges on the generator front panel with a black marker, then assemble the generator unit. Now gather the hydraulic box, frame front, the mud flaps, 3 of each, and the mud guard and spray those olive drab. Assemble the generator assembly, the hydraulic box, and the frame front together. Now attach those units to the main frame. The mud guard is attached to the right bottom of the front of the main frame, and the mud flaps are attached to the left front, left rear, and right rear on the bottom of the main frame. Paint the left and right side panels for the main frame with the camouflage olive drab. Now attach the left side panel to the main frame, and note that on the right side panel, the bar on the bottom of the right side panel must go behind the lower portion of the generator assembly to attach it there. Now the forward platform, the ladder step, the right and left center platforms, and the right and left rear platforms are painted green too. Now the forward platform is attached to the front frame and the center cross frame. Then the right center platform is attached to the right side of the main frame assembly between the center cross frame and the rear frame. The left center platform is attached to the left side of the main frame assembly between the center cross frame and the rear frame, and the right rear platform is attached to the right side of the main frame between the rear frame and the rear panel. The left rear platform is attached to the left side of the main frame between the rear frame and the rear panel. And finally, the ladder step is attached to the front left side of the frame front. Now paint both of the ladder steps, part number 94, the Rust-Oleum camouflage olive drab. Now install the ladder steps onto the pegs on the right and left rear platform. You won't need to use any glue, and you can either stow them in the up or down position. Now gather the inner and outer spare tire halves, assemble those, paint the wheel portion olive drab and the outer portion flat black or a rubber color. Now attach the spare tire to the front spare tire bracket. Now position the mainframe and the chassis assembly. Now we can mate the main frame to the chassis assembly. When I assembled the main frame to the chassis assembly, I noticed that the spare tire had a little clearance issue. Probably would be better to add the spare front tire to the assembly after you mate the main frame and the chassis assembly. Now we can begin work on the missile by gathering the stabilizers and the fuselage. Now insert the main stabilizers onto the lower half of the fuselage and then trap it into place with the top half, putting them together. Now paint this unit white. Now attach the nose cone to the nose section. The nose antenna is attached to the nose cone, and the whole assembly is painted orange. Paint the other stabilizers white also. Paint the bracket and antenna here white, and the exhaust nozzle, the vertical tail, and the horizontal stabilizer are painted flat black. Attach the nose assembly, antenna, and bracket to the fuselage assembly. Now install the vertical tail into the exhaust nozzle and the horizontal stabilizer into the exhaust nozzle. Now attach the exhaust nozzle assembly to the lower end of the fuselage. Now you can apply 2 each of decal 17 and 18 as well as decal 21 to the missile assembly to complete that. Gather the elevating cylinder halves and related parts and spray paint those with the olive drab paint. Attach the hydraulic cylinder to the right pivot bracket without glue. Now the right pivot bracket is attached to the right elevating cylinder half, also no glue, and the piston is installed into the hydraulic cylinder and attached to a post on the left elevating cylinder half. The left pivot bracket is attached to the left elevating cylinder half without glue, and the hydraulic cylinder also no glue, and the right pivot bracket which is glued in place. The launch rail, hydraulic hand pump, telescopic sight, and linkage are spray painted with the olive drab paint. Attach the launch rail to the elevating cylinder assembly. The telescopic sight is attached to a bracket on the left elevating cylinder half, and the hydraulic hand pump is attached to a bracket on the right elevating cylinder half. The linkage is attached to the launch rail and the left elevating cylinder half. The cable support then is attached to the right elevating cylinder half. Install the missile assembly onto the elevating cylinder assembly. The bracket slides down onto the launch rail, and make sure there's no flash in the bracket so that the missile assembly will slide down the launch rail smoothly. Now glue the missile assembly securely into the rear middle of the main frame. Now spray the overall model with a light coat of gloss or Future with Pledge to give it something smooth for the decals to stick to. Then go ahead and apply the decals in place as they're shown in the guides that come with the kit, or you can use these photos as a guide as well. After the decals have dried, give the overall model a couple of coats with clear flat spray. Now here's a view of the Lacrosse missile and carrier as it would have appeared right off the assembly line. This kit came with 5 crew member figures in various poses. I used Model Master acrylic skin tone with a warm tint for the hands and faces, and some olive drab for the uniforms and helmets, some gloss white for the tool in the kneeling soldier's hand, and some tan, flat tan for the shirts, flat brown for the belts, holsters, and radio case, and some Testors semi-gloss black for the boots. 2 of my soldiers had some defects in the middle of their backs, and they can be fixed with some basic putty to correct those problems. I glued a small piece of styrene sheet onto the feet of the soldiers so that they would stand up. Then I covered the styrene sheet with some diorama gravel to make it look more realistic. You can get that at a hobby shop. Now here's the ready crew waiting to man their battle stations. The instructions don't really mention it, but there's a piece of clear acetate here for the windows. Mark a template through the windows on a piece of 3x5 card to use to cut out your window. Now use some of the clear parts glue or some white glue to install the window into place in the front windshield. One small issue with the kit was that the fuel can was too tall for the driver's door to open, so I cut it at the top of the fuel can holder and reattached it together. And I also shaved off a piece of the top since the actual handles are not as high as they are molded on this one. Spray the can camouflage olive drab and glue it back into place. This was a great kit to build with only a few minor flaws. And well, where else are you going to get some kind of subject matter like this? Maybe the truck chassis wasn't exactly right and the scale was just a little bit off, but overall it makes a great addition for the military modeler and just an interesting piece to put on your shelf. We hope you like our step-by-step reviews, and so that you don't miss any issue, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find us on the web at www.rightonreplicas.com and on Facebook too. Thanks.